Chapter 695, The Sixth Sword Holder. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. Jang Yuochen spoke seriously. I'd like to know if the completion of Sword 1 is the full extent of her strength. Is it possible that the power that Chifa has displayed so far is just the tip of the iceberg? A melodious female voice interrupted their conversation from behind. Senior Sister Apprentice and Junior Fellow Apprentice Lin Yue. Are you going to the Sword Pavilion too? Jang Yuochen and Gai Danjiao stopped simultaneously, looked at each other, and then turned around to glare at Chifa, who was not far away. It was quite coincidental that she appeared the instant they mentioned her. Jang Yuochen smiled and said, Senior Sister Apprentice Chi, how is everything going? Chifa caught up using her light footwork. A subtle scent emanated from her and a slight smile hovered on her beautiful face. She said, beginning today, I will enter the Sword Pavilion to seclude myself for refining and spare no effort to perceive Sword 2. On the 9th day of September, perhaps I, on behalf of the Yin and Yang sect, will take part in the Sword Technique Conference. Chifa was a top-seeded warrior of the Yin and Yang sect. Now that her Tao of the Sword was at the completion of Sword 1, she would naturally be cultivated emphatically. Gai Danjiao mentioned nothing about the moon worship demonic sect and remained calm. She said, is that so? Then, let's go together. The three of them went to the Sword Pavilion. This time, the person whom Jang Yuochen met was not Moonbury Sword Saint but Chi Hong, the sixth sword holder of the Sword Pavilion. Chi Hong looked like a middle-aged man in his 40s and was dressed in a plain cotton garment. Although he was a lofty half-saint, he did not have the majesty of one but was instead like a gentle teacher. Chi Hong fixed his eyes on Jang Yuochen and Chifa and smiled as he said, good, really good. Both of you have practiced Sword 1 to the completion. During the Sword Technique Conference, you are bound to shoot to fame. But you have a great mission to safeguard the Sword Pavilion. It is far from enough to reach the realm of the completion of Sword 1. My task is to help you enter the threshold of Sword 2 as quickly as possible, and then reach the first realm of Sword 2, Yin-Yang alternation. I will now explain what it is and how to integrate the inspiration into the Tao of the Sword. Jang Yuochen and Chifa sat cross-legged, a look of concentration on their faces. As for Gai Danjiao, she did not listen to the lecture because she had difficulty practicing Sword 2 successfully due to her physical quality. Chi Hong continued speaking. Yin-Yang alternation can be interpreted as the interchanging power between Yin nature and Yang nature. For example, the changes between day and night, or dusk and dawn, are moments of Yin-Yang alternation. Chi Hong explained for 4 whole hours. What he said was quite similar to the notes of Moonbury Sword Saint on Sword 2. But he expounded some sections to make them more understandable. According to Chi Hong's explanation, if they hoped to practice the realm of Yin-Yang alternation successfully, they were supposed to grasp its true essence and then integrate the essence into their Tao of the Sword. The deeper the understanding of its essence, the stronger the Tao of the Sword would be. In the following month, you can practice on the first level of the Sword Pavilion or its second level. Whoever reaches the realm of Yin-Yang alternation first will be awarded a piece of Sword Soul Hailstone, Chi Hong said as he smiled. The Sword Soul Hailstone was a treasure that only existed in the Sword Pavilion. If one were to ingest it, it could improve a sword practitioner's realm of the Tao of the Sword. Jang Yuochen knew the value of the Sword Soul Hailstone. If he could acquire it, he could speed up the practice of his realm of Tao of the Sword to the peak of heart integrated into Sword. At the same time, the Sword Soul Hailstone was a great aid to practice Sword 2. A bright gleam appeared in Chifa's eyes. She glanced at Jang Yuochen, chuckled and said, Junior Fellow Apprentice Lin Yue, from now on, we are competitors. I will definitely practice Sword 2 to the first realm within 1 month. Actually, Chifa had already reached Yin-Yang alternation, the first realm of Sword 2, but at that time, she had been reluctant to participate in the Sword Technique Conference. She, therefore, showed only the 8th realm of Sword 1. Now that she had decided to take part in the Sword Technique Conference and repress Li Yue, there was no more need for her to conceal her cultivation. She simply had to wait for 1 month and then she could reveal the first realm of Sword 2 and win the Sword Soul Hailstone. Moreover, there was a chance that she could practice to the second realm of Sword 2. It was precisely because Chifa had already reached the first realm of Sword 2 that she knew better than anyone how hard it was to practice Sword 2. She did not believe that Lin Yue could reach the first realm of Sword 2 within a month. She had already won before the competition even started. 1 month is sufficient. Zhang Yuochen looked at Chifa's impeccably beautiful face and spoke firmly. Qi Hong was one of the Q's forefathers. He knew Chifa's accomplishment in the Tower of the Sword. In Qi Hong's opinion, even with the substantial resources of the Sword Pavilion, Lin Yue would not be able to advance much in Sword 2, let alone reach its first realm. After all, even with his half-cent realm and decades of arduous practice, he was still at the fourth realm of Sword 2. That was why he made the Sword Soul Hailstone the reward for the contest. It was his way of giving it to Chifa. Chifa headed to the second level of the Sword Pavilion after listening to Qi Hong's lecture. Time on the second level of the Sword Pavilion passed by 3 times faster than in the external world, while on the first level it was twice faster. Obviously, practicing on the second level was superior. However, Zhang Yuochen remained on the first level of the Sword Pavilion and borrowed 2 notes on Sword 2. He went to the 18th room of titled Black. The room was divided into 36 smaller rooms. 5 rooms were closed, apparently. Sword practitioners were secluding themselves inside for refining. Zhang Yuochen randomly selected one room near the corner, walked in, and started the array of the room to close it. Inside, the small room was a completely independent space that was 30 meters long and wide. It was around the size of 2 basketball courts. The door and wall were engraved with an inscription of array. Even spiritual power could not penetrate through it. Roar! Zhang Yuochen banged his fist on the left wall, creating whirls of energy ripples. The array on the wall quickly diffused the force. The defensive power is so strong, even a half-saint won't be able to rip through the array in the seclusion house. Zhang Yuochen was completely reassured. He took out 2 notes on Sword 2, sat cross-legged on the ground, and began reading. The 2 notes had been compiled by Sword Saint Xuanji and 9 Serenity Sword Saint respectively. They not only contained the 2 Sword Saints' ideas, but they also had a lot in common with Moonbury Sword Saint's notes. After finishing the 2 notes, he borrowed the notes on Sword 2 compiled by 6 half-saint geniuses and continued to study and analyze. While the notes by the Sword Saints were highly enigmatic, the half-saint geniuses' notes on Sword 2 also had merit. Zhang Yuochen was in no hurry to begin practicing Sword 2 and did not plan to mechanically follow any notes on Sword 2 to practice. He preferred to read and learn, and then sum up his own Tower of the Sword from every predecessor's notes. 1 month later, Zhang Yuochen finally finished 6 notes on Sword 2. He sat cross-legged in the seclusion house and entered a meditative state. To sort and summarize, the time that elapsed on the first level of the Sword Pavilion was double compared to the external world. In other words, a month was equal to half a month in the external world. Because Zhang Yuochen had stayed in the seclusion house, no one discovered that he had changed back to his original appearance. Outside Zhang Yuochen's seclusion house, Chifa had a confused look in her beautiful, starry eyes. Half the allotted time has passed. Is he still staying in the seclusion house and only looking at others' notes on Sword 2? Yes, he is. A lump of holy qi condensed and transformed into Qi Hong. Qi Hong laughed and said, 1 compilation of notes on Sword 2 is quite enough so that the thinking can be clear and the direction precise. Too much reading will result in a mishmash of thoughts. Even worse, the substantial knowledge of Tower of the Sword might drive him mad. Has Lin Yue been driven to the brink of madness? Chifa nodded in agreement. The wordless sword manual was the simplified Tower of the Sword that integrated hundreds of thousands of sword techniques into one move and then divided the move into Sword 1. Sword 2, Sword 3. Lin Yue was too smart for his own good. He complicated simple matters by reading and studying every legend's notes. A jack of all trades, master of none. It seems that I have overestimated him. She pursed her red lips, disappointed with Lin Yue. She had thought he was a worthy opponent. She never thought that he would ruin himself this way. Qi Hong said, he won't even compete against you. This Sword Soul Hailstone will certainly belong to you. With the treasure's help, you have a great chance to practice to the second realm of Sword 2 before the Sword Technique Conference. Swoosh. The array's light on the door of the seclusion house dissipated gradually. Zhang Yuochen opened the door and walked outside. Seeing Chifu and Chi Hong standing outside, he asked with a glimmer of a smile, "Predecessor Chi Hong and senior sister apprentice Chi, are you going to seclude yourselves for refining?" Ignoring the astonished look on their faces, Zhang Yuochen returned 6 notebooks about Sword 2 to the bookshelf and stepped straight out of the Sword Pavilion. Shifu saw that Zhang Yuochen looked energetic and seemed to have made progress in his realm of Tao of the Sword. He did not show any sign of madness at all. Her long black eyebrows converged slightly. She said, "His Tao of the Sword has improved a lot again. It is so strange. I will follow him to see what he has done." Shifu took the form of a shadow and followed Zhang Yuochen out of the Sword Pavilion.